Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us at How to Create the Ultimate Live Data Dashboard. We're happy that you're here. Today we're going to cover the following things that you can see on the agenda. We hope to only take up about 40 minutes of your time. And here's some of our contact information. Please connect with us on your favorite social media platform. Today we have Jen from Chartio and Glenn from Treasure Data, who will be teaching you how to create this master dashboard. Let's meet them. Jen.
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I'm a product specialist at Chartio. My main role is to help our customers become experts on their data through Chartio. So I primarily help them in any way, so answer their questions when creating charts, dashboards, pretty much anything Chartio related. I'm the person to ask. And a little bit of background on my experience with data. So I started my journey as someone who didn't know SQL at all, or really what it meant to be data-driven. And so fast forward to now, I'm comfortable answering my own questions, building dashboards, and not only that, but I'm also building dashboards for my entire org. So that brings me to my next slide. What is Chartio and what can it do for you? So Chartio is on a mission to democratize data across orgs so that everyone can become their own data hero and answer their own questions. And we've done that by building a cloud-based data exploration tool that is simple for everyone, but also powerful enough for the data team. And so we enable our customers to explore, transform, and visualize their data in real time. So that's a little bit about me and Chartio, and now on to my wonderful co-host, Glenn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Glenn Davis, and I am Product Marketing Manager at Treasure Data. And what that means is that my job is to understand our customers' needs and experience, and then use that to guide the continuing development of the product. And we've had a very exciting year. As Laura mentioned, we have a new connector for Chartio, and we also have some really great automation tools, which I'll touch on as we go through this. So what is Treasure Data? Treasure Data is a live data management platform. And so what does that mean? Well, most companies' data is housed in a lot of different business applications and SaaS tools, which were in many cases not designed to easily share data with each other. So the implication of this, we'll go to the next slide, in many companies is that the company's data is disconnected. As I said, the tools don't talk to each other, and so it's very difficult sometimes to correlate data that you'd like to correlate. This creates delayed data as you have to wait for engineering to connect the data, and it prevents the people who need it from being able to get access to the data when they need it. So Treasure Data was designed to solve this problem, and this gave rise to the idea of live data management. Next slide. And live data management is the exact opposite of what I just said. It's data that is connected, current, and easily accessible. Companies today need live data to stay competitive, and even companies with a huge internal data infrastructure and teams of data engineers struggle with this. It takes a lot of work normally to keep your data connected, current, and easily accessible, and Treasure Data is meant to take a lot of that work out. If you go to the next slide, we'll show you just real quickly. This is kind of the behind-the-scenes architecture of Treasure Data. It was really designed as a scalable solution that makes it possible for companies to have unified live data access automatically on tap 24/7 with no additional engineering support. And when you combine Treasure Data with Chartio, this has some really powerful applications. Which Jen is going to show you how that works visually in a beautiful dashboard. I'm just going to walk you through a little bit behind the scenes. If you go to the next slide, and the next slide, of how we approach this and why we approach this. So one of the problems that we see that many of our customers have that can be solved with live data management is the need to have a single customer view. This makes it very difficult to, not having a single customer view makes it very difficult to connect the dots between what your customers do and the outcomes. And you can, there are a lot of tools, very powerful tools that give you kind of an aggregate view of your customer's behavior. And if you go to the next slide, what Treasure Data does is it really allows you to track your individual customers' behavior from point to point to point in their journey. And so I'll show you a little bit of what we mean by this. So this is a very simplified example. Go to the next slide. So in lead generation, very frequently, companies will use Marketo forms. And the way Marketo forms work, so companies that use Marketo or any other similar tool, the way they work is very, very simple. You fill out a form, the form submits the data to Marketo, and then Marketo in particular is designed to kind of tightly sync with Salesforce, which is great. So then you get all of that lead information into Salesforce. But what if you also want to collect page view data? If you were using Marketo in Salesforce, you're probably also collecting page view data. So if you go to the next slide, you know, one way of doing this is to use Google Analytics. Google Analytics, again, very powerful tool for giving you an aggregate view of your page view data. But if you want to connect that with your individual lead data in Salesforce, there's no easy way to do that. And that's true even if you're using, you know, an enterprise level kind of analytics tool like, let's say, Heap, which will give you a more granular view of your customer data, but it still takes some work to get that connected with Salesforce. So let's see how Treasure Data changes that picture. If you go to the next slide. So with Treasure Data, we have a JavaScript SDK, which is simply it's like a few lines of code that you enter the relevant information and paste it into the header of your websites. And once you've done that, you're all of a sudden collecting a whole lot more information than you would have collected before. Not only can you collect your page view data, you can actually, at the same time as your data is submitted to Marketo, when you click submit, it's also submitted to Treasure Data, along with a cookie ID and a Treasure Data ID. Now, why is all of this important? Because, go to the next slide. One of the things that is included in your form submission data is the email of the lead who filled out the form. And this makes it a very, very simple matter to do a join on that email field from Salesforce. And now all of your data is instantly integrated in Treasure Data. And I mentioned earlier, we've come out in the last year with some interesting automation tools. We have a tool called Treasure Data Workflow, which automates sequences of queries. So all of this can be set up to be automated so that this all just happens automatically behind the scenes, and then all of your data is connected and current and easily accessible in Treasure Data. And with our Chartio connector, you'll be able to see what powerful kind of access this gives to you. If I made this sound really super simple, that's because it is. But now I'm going to pass it off to Jen and show the power that kind of comes along with that simplicity, especially when you combine Treasure Data with Chartio.
Okay, great. Thanks, Glenn. Passing it over to Jen to give you all a little more information about how this works.
All right. Okay, so right now I'm logged into Chartio, and when you log into Chartio, you're welcome with this homepage where you can see a list of all your dashboards, depending on how many dashboards you made or what you've been access to. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect our Treasure Data. And so to do that, we're going to go to our Data Sources tab up here. And this is a prime example of if you didn't have Treasure Data, a lot of your data will actually be separated out. So you'll see there's like Google Analytics, there's Salesforce, there's a CSV, and this is a lot of most common business users run into this problem where they have to determine where the information they need are coming from. But with Treasure Data, you can all do that in like one simple data source. So Treasure Data is going to make this really easy for you because they're going to give you all the information that you need in a database of your choice, and then you can just click on that database and input all the information all into one form. And then once you press connect, it will take just a matter of seconds before you have your data ready to start and building your charts from. And so I actually have that up right here. So instead of having separate Salesforce, Marketo, Google Analytics data sources, I have it all in one marketing data repository. And so anyone that needs this data can just use this data source instead. And so on this page, you can give access to whoever needs it, and then you can also tinker around with all the settings for this data sources. And so now that we have this data source connected, we can start building dashboards and charts from it. And to do that, I'm going to go here. And creating a new dashboard is super simple. All you have to do is title it. So I'm going to call it demo, put in the demo category, press create, and I have my brand new dashboards. And you can start creating charts right away. But in this case, we actually have built out a beautiful dashboard here using the data provided by Treasure Data. And a little bit about this dashboard. So with the marketing data that Treasure Data has provided, we built this beautiful leads dashboard. And I didn't really build it, but my marketing partner did. And although I'm SQL proficient, she's not as comfortable with it, but we managed to build this dashboard together in about 30 minutes. And so you can easily see and visualize that with Chartio, you can build beautiful dashboards within minutes. So this dashboard, we built it so that's easily digestible. And it's really important because a messy dashboard with a lot of colors and charts can seriously affect how an audience would interpret the message that you're trying to convey. And so we prioritize making sure that this dashboard is clutter-free so that the audience can focus on what's important. And our goal with this dashboard is really to tell a story. So we're going from the top to the bottom where you have the main numbers, and then as you scroll down, we slice and dice that data to see how those numbers are broken down. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is, with any important leads dashboard, is determine how many leads we're bringing in, which is this very first metric here. And what's interesting about this chart is it's actually comparing the leads for the current 30 days to the previous 30 days. And instead of just showing you how this is built, I'm going to actually walk you through how easy it is to create this chart. So I'm going to go ahead and add a chart. This will take you into our chart creator. And since Treasure Data has made this super easy, all you have to do is select the data source that Treasure Data has provided you, and then you can easily start building charts from here. And so to build this chart, I'm going to need to count how many leads I'm bringing in for the current 30 days. And I'm going to do that by taking the lead ID. The reason why is every lead that's coming in has a unique ID, and you can count that to determine how many leads you have. So I'm going to drag that into the measures. And then I can aggregate it any way I want. And in this case, I do want to count how many leads I have. So I'll just do leads, 30 days. Press OK. So now I have my count of leads for the 30 days. I did say I want to capture the current 30 days, so I'm going to narrow down when these leads were created into the filter section. So I'm going to narrow that down to the last 30 days. And it's really just that simple. If I press run query, I immediately will get how many leads I have for the last 30 days. So everything that I've done so far is in the interactive drag and drop. So if you're not familiar with SQL, you can easily drag and drop this. And this is how my marketing partner was able to create a lot of these charts on this dashboard. But if you're very SQL savvy, you're more comfortable with it, you can easily switch into the SQL mode. And then you can either copy paste any existing queries that you have or edit the one that we have created for you. All right, so now we made our first one. I'm going to rename this layer to the 30 days. And now I need to compare this number with the previous 30 days. You can think of what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add another layer as cell blocks within Excel. So in each cell, you can do your own unique calculation. And so in one cell or in one layer, I have the leads for the current 30 days. And then in this second layer, so you can think of it as like a separate cell, I'm going to do previous 30 days. So in this layer, I'll be calculating out the number of leads for the 30 days before. And I can do that by doing the same thing. I'm going to, whoops, not the created date, the lead ID. I'm going to count it, but this time I'm going to name it previous 30 days. And I'm going to take the lead created date. So, but instead of the last 30 days, I'm actually going to do N and M for now, 31, offset that by 1, and run the query. And I get 96. So this is the number of leads I have for the previous 30 days. And down here in the merge layers, you can actually determine how you get to join these two data. So much similar to doing a calculation based on two other cells in Excel, you can actually determine, whoops, I meant to do cross join. You can actually determine how you want this data to be combined. So in this case, I want it separated into its individual columns. I've done that. And once I get the data how I want it, I can choose how to visualize it. And in this case, I'm choosing to do a single value indicator, which immediately gives me the percentage and compares the two numbers. And in the settings here, I can give it a title, so I can do leads, 30 days versus previous 30 days. I can also determine the colors, and I have my chart. Once I do, I can go ahead and save it. And you can see that I created the same exact chart in a matter of minutes. I'm just going to stick it down here for now. All right, so that's the number of leads, which is the top of our funnel. And as you can see that the numbers that follow it, these single value indicator numbers, are also bigger numbers that we're looking to track. And then as we move down towards the dashboard, we have these numbers but broken down by different information. So we're now slicing and dicing that data. And you can see here that it's a lot more visual, and we also have dashboard variables, which allows you to interact with the charts itself. So you can see if I only care about website direct as my lead source, or maybe I only care about a particular lead status, or if I'm looking at this chart and I want to know, account contact has a big chunk of this pie chart, I want to see a breakdown of where they're at. Get rid of this. Yeah, so you can interact with the charts, and it's very important, especially when you're sharing your dashboards, that you make it as interactive and dynamic as possible so that it can, your audience, a variety of audiences can use your dashboard to answer their questions. And I'm actually going to go into the lead source by status chart because it's a great example of how you can easily slice and dice your data without having to know a lot of SQL. So when I go into this chart, you can see that it's very similar to the first chart I created, but there's a little bit more information that's here. And I'm doing the same thing, so I'm counting the number of leads, but instead I'm breaking it down by lead status and lead source. And so I've included that in my dimensions. And then you'll notice here that in my filters I have a little bit more, and that's because I'm utilizing those dashboard variables on the dashboard itself. So I have the lead created date filtered by the calendar start and end, so when you choose on that date picker, it will actually limit that time range. And then I also have lead source and lead status, which if you choose a source or status from the drop-downs, it will actually filter down to this chart and then it will update it. And then down here, I've actually utilized the data pipeline. So a lot of this stuff, you can actually do data manipulation, kind of like light transformations in our data pipeline. So with this pivot data, you can see the data before and after, and you can visualize and see how the data has been transformed. And a lot of the steps we have already pre-built, and you can do easily with one click. You don't even have to do a lot of complicated steps. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out, press OK. And so now we have this chart. And similarly, a lot of these charts were built in the same way, where you don't have to do a lot of steps, and you can already get the value and the information from the charts. For example, the sales funnel, which is a very common metric that a lot of sales and marketing people utilize, we can easily see how this is built. And sales funnel is one of those interesting things where it's very hard for people to create funnels just because it comes from a lot of different data sources. And so earlier, as I was saying, a lot of people would get this data from either their CSVs, their database, Salesforce, Marketo, whatever data source that you use, which makes it really hard because then they have to know where the data is coming from. But with Treasure Data, you can easily just use one data source. So instead of having to remember that maybe my click data is from Marketo and then I have to get data from Google Analytics, I can just use the marketing database that's provided to me by Treasure Data. and which makes it super easy when creating this funnel because similar to the concept that I showed you in the first chart where you use layers, kind of individual cells to calculate things, that's what I've used each layer to do. So I've calculated all the individual metrics that go into this funnel, and then I can put it together and create this beautiful funnel with just a couple of steps. So very easy to do. And especially because of the sales funnel, it's very easy to see and compare to the industry benchmark. How are you doing? How healthy are your sales and marketing leads? And get a lot of insight and data from it. And let's see. A lot of these other charts are actually very similarly built. I've actually gone through the most complicated chart, which is probably the sales funnel. Everything else in comparison is much easier. And that's thanks to not only Chartio, but also the data that's provided by Treasure Data, just because they made it easier by aggregating all those different data sources all into one.
All right, well, cool. So I think now we're going to open up for some questions. So anybody listening, go ahead. You can type it on in to the chat box or the questions box. We have a few, I think, already, and I think, Sasha, will you go ahead and tell us what we got?
So this first question comes from Kim. She wants to know, what will this cost and how is pricing determined? So I guess, Glenn, do you want to start with Treasure Data's side, and then we'll go into Chartio?
Sure. Well, the simple short answer is that it depends, which I know is not the most satisfying answer, but the way that it's determined for Treasure Data is simply by the amount of data that your company uses, and so and also by the amount of compute resources that you might need. So so it's hard to say what a typical cost would be, but for most companies, it's going to start somewhere around $5,000 a month.
Awesome, cool. And then on Chartio's end, it depends, but we start at $2,000 per user per year. That's unlimited data sources, unlimited amount of data, and then as your organization grows, we price based off of the amount of seats you have. Cool. So our next question comes from Joseph, and it's, what are the most common data sources Treasure Data works with?
Well, the most common data sources, I would say, we purposefully included Salesforce and Marketo because those are very common data sources. So CRMs, web data, streaming data from mobile is very commonly used. And we have, like, if you go to the Treasure Data website, treasuredata.com, you can see that we have about 100 connectors listed on there at this point. For everything from financial e-commerce, online, offline, to all different kinds of business apps. We mentioned Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Heap, and of course business intelligence apps like Chartio. And most of these connectors are input and output, so they can take data in from any source in a schema flexible format, unify it automatically, and then pipe it out to any destination.
Great. And that sounds pretty much on par with what Chartio has seen as well. We also see a lot of people connecting to their Salesforce data and the business data. So our next question is from Jim, and it's, if I have Treasure Data, why do I need Chartio? So Jen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so earlier I said one of the missions for Chartio, and it's that we want to enable our customers to explore, transform, and visualize their data, and I can't stress that enough. but we don't manage your data. And that's really where Treasure Data comes in, because they will do all that heavy lifting for you. They will take all your different data sources, combine it together, and make it very easy for you to explore, transform, and visualize your data within Chartio.
Yeah, it's pretty much the exact answer I would give, just the inverse of that. Treasure Data is meant to be a BI tool agnostic. So what we find is that many companies, when they start using Treasure Data, they're already using several different business applications and SaaS tools. And they want to be able to use those tools and unify the data from them, not to replace them. And that's where Treasure Data comes in. And then that also allows you to use best-of-breed business intelligence tools like Chartio, where, as Jen said, you can really slice and dice the data and create beautiful visualizations of it, which, after all, is ultimately what you want to do. That's one of the biggest roles for data in the organization, is to be able to see it and make decisions from it. So,
great.
It's a great partnership.
Thanks, Glenn. So this next question comes from Katie, and it's, can I join millions of rows without breaking Chartio?
All right, I'll take that. You can, but I would say that it's not what Chartio is for. Joining millions and millions of rows doesn't give you the best visualization. A lot of that should be done on the back end, and that's where Treasure Data could be leveraged, because when you're joining millions and millions of rows, you're probably doing a lot of data management stuff, which Treasure Data can easily do, that Chartio cannot.
Great. Yeah, so that's, again, to Glenn's point, great partnership.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think this is one of our last questions. From Jeremy, it is, how do I convince my IT department to do this and get on board? Glenn, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I would say that what this does is it's going to free up the IT department to use their resources in a more powerful way. So if the IT department is not constantly, for instance, having to create data connections for the marketing and analytics departments, then they can, for instance, focus more on production analytics and working on the actual infrastructure of the company. That's, I think, what the big selling point for IT would be for Treasure Data. Jen, do you want to add to that at all?
We don't really run into the IT department, but the equivalent question would be like, how would you convince your data team or data engineer why you would want to use Chartio? I mean, with Treasure Data, it does make it a lot easier, especially because once those sources are aggregated, it makes it so much more available for business users to start creating charts and dashboards. And why Chartio comes in handy is you don't need to know SQL. We made a tool that if you are not familiar with SQL, you can definitely start creating charts and dashboards and progress to a stage where you are comfortable.
And I would just add on to that, because you're talking to the data team or the analysts there, we also, kind of to the same point as you guys, we save the analysts time, because we have, we're giving the business users the tools to be able to answer their own questions. That means that they're taking out those routine reports and everything that they usually would ask the analyst for, and they're doing it themselves. So the analyst now has more time to be able to explore more complex queries. So very similar point. And then from Morgan, he wants to know, do I need a data warehouse before signing up with Treasure Data?
The answer is no. Just very simple. Treasure Data basically is a cloud data warehouse. That's one of the things that Treasure Data does. Now, having said that, Treasure Data also works very smoothly and seamlessly with other cloud, with your in-house data warehouse, or with cloud data warehouses. A lot of customers use Treasure Data with things like Redshift and BigQuery. They want to use some of the features of those tools. So Treasure Data allows you to do that, but you do not need to have a data warehouse to get started with Treasure Data.
Cool. That makes things a lot easier, especially since you don't have to choose between the different data warehouses and get into that mess. Yep. So I think this is our last question. What is the difference between Chartio and the other BI tools out there?
I can answer. So I work a lot with our customers, and oftentimes, I'm curious myself, like, why did you choose Chartio over other tools? And to simply put it, Chartio gives them the option to either, their business users the power to create and answer their own questions. And we've made this much easier than our other competitors. Our interactive mode makes it very easy for people to interact with their data, but we also don't shy away from more powerful analytics that we give our more advanced users, for example, SQL mode and being able to do complex joins and layers and things like that. So we really give our users the option to choose what fits best with them.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Morgan, so we also, unlike other BI tools out there, we don't require SQL or really any other proprietary modeling languages. So we are native SQL based, but we also have the drag and drop mode, as you guys saw, and that is quite different from the other BI platforms out there.
I was just, Jen, I was going to tag on to that to say that to me there's kind of a parallel value proposition between Chartio and Treasure Data. We strive to make, I mentioned that we strive to make things very simple to get your data connected and get started, but then we give you a lot of power tools for analysts and people who really need to get their hands on the data and really tease it apart, which is very, very important when you are at that point where your business application gives you everything you need except the question that you need answered. Treasure Data allows you to really pick those things apart. Same thing with Chartio. Chartio allows you to get up and running very, very easily. It's got a beautiful interface that makes it very easy to use, but then it also allows you to go very, very deep, as you can see. It gives you to get your hands on the data, get dirty with the data, if you will, and be able to really get all of your questions answered with one BI tool. It's very powerful.
Well, great. Thanks, everybody. I want to say thank you to Glenn from Treasure Data. Thank you to Jen and Sasha from Chartio for being here today. We are almost at our 40 minutes, so we don't want to take up any more of anybody's valuable time. So thank you so much for coming. We are going to send out the recording of this webinar probably tomorrow. So if you have a colleague who missed it, go ahead and share it with them.
It looks like someone just put in a question right under the wire.
Oh, goodness.
I wouldn't want to not answer it. So Rushdie asks, is it a good idea to use Microsoft Excel as a database and transform it as a dashboard on Chartio?
Yeah, I'll answer this. Yes, you definitely can do that. So we do allow CSV uploads, which you can easily transport your Excel spreadsheet into a CSV. While that is also very powerful and you can do it in minutes, Chartio is also great as like a big data tool. So if you want to think in a bigger scale, kind of loading this data into your database and combining with other data that you have will make your charts and dashboard much more powerful and give you more context.
Great. Cool. Under the wire. Love it. Again, so I'd like to say thank you to Glenn from Treasure Data. Thank you, Jen and Sasha. So yes, everybody, we will be sending out this recording. So watch your emails and yeah, please pass it on if any of your colleagues missed it. But otherwise, have a fabulous Tuesday. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.